Guys, this is where I'm gonna start bringing you guys along. If you can see, the cluster is powered up, all the lights. The trouble codes here are all listed as being in not current, basically past tense, and along with that we are getting communication with all what looks to be all the modules. So this vehicle's issue is it'll turn into a no power up, no crank, no start, obviously, and it gets some trouble codes, communication codes, so on and so forth. So this is where I am hooked up with the scope, 2 buses here, and then on the power supply, 3 power supplies to the cluster. So being that right now the condition is that it's communicating, I am going to go ahead and clear the whole memory and start from here. So it's gone into its kind of dropout mode. You can tell the cluster completely is basically shut off. That's still powered up. I paused it at the point where it went into that mode. You can see we've got a dropout there. But it stays running until you key it off, and then you won't be able to power it up. Alright, and just to show you as it's still running, I'm still in that page of where I cleared all the fault memories, where everything did communicate. So let's back out and reread the whole vehicle. One thing I noticed, look at the voltage. Alright, so this is where we're at now after the complete scan. We've got trouble codes and a bunch of modules, and they're listed as current, and you can tell the type of codes. And at this point we are getting some of the other modules, sometimes we don't. Alright, so now the thing that happens when it's in this mode, basically I let it idle for, I don't know, 45 minutes, it gets in this mode. It can happen while driving or just idling. As soon as you key it off, it's going to go into no power up. So kind of have to be mindful of where I shut it off. And for now, I think maybe it'll be okay as far as where it's at, but I'm gonna have to try to chase and see why we had the voltage dropout on the scope, which I can show and explain here in a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and commit to shutting it off. The other thing, as we're idling and running, you can tell as we notice the voltage. So alternator's not being controlled, even though we are talking to the engine computer. So there's another funky thing there, potentially maybe something to do with that guy there. So it just gets into this whole crazy funky electrical mode, and we'll go ahead and shut it off and I'll show you. So we are off and try to power up. Look at the cluster. So just the middle section will come on like that. Those center screens do turn on, but nothing more past that on the cluster. Let's hit it again. That's it, nothing. So now we are in our dead state. I'll try to, let's power it up. let's see. So that's as much as we can get it to power up, where we still are able to scan it. So we'll do another scan when it's now in its fully dead state after a key cycle and see what comes up. Alright, so these are the ones that we are left dealing with and what they've switched over to as far as the status. Let's see, current. So pretty much almost similar, same thing as before. Alright guys, so just to give a quick rundown of what we've got going on. I know I kind of started this a little bit backwards just because I was in the middle of testing and I wanted to get some of those captures caught on film. So basically what's going on is this vehicle, once it's started up, running, and driven, after some amount of time, when you park it, it won't start again. Or if you start it and let it just idle for a while, it'll basically get into that mode that I showed where it looks as if the cluster drops out, and now we also realize that we lose battery charging, and once that gets keyed off, we won't be able to start the vehicle again, just like when either it gets driven for a while and I guess one of the components needs to warm up and it fails, or just let it idle, let it warm up, and it'll fail. And so that's what I've been testing for, not really having a good direction or idea of what to look for. It almost comes off as if there's an immobilizer problem, like a key is not being recognized. So you might start to think you have a key problem. The other thing is, it looks like you might have a communication problem throughout the vehicle, and then there's a bus problem to figure out to get the car operational again. And also to add to that, there is an engine code that I will put on the screen, that it's in the ECM, and if you search on that code, people kind of have similar issues about a starting problem or not starting problem. Basically, either having a battery problem, key battery problem, or a possible bad engine computer based off of that code. Because it's one of those kind of like EEPROM, internal issue, ECM trouble codes that can just easily be misunderstood, and you can just throw an ECM at it with the hopes of that being the issue at hand. But a lot of things just were not making sense, being that once it either drops out or stops operating, you can still get some sort of scanning performed, even though we don't do our full key cycling positions to the position 2. We can still talk to the car and some of the modules, and one of them is the engine computer. And so I was kind of putting that off to the side, not thinking that that's going to be a fix for this. Then the whole bus communication problem issue, I kind of put that off to the side because, again, we can speak to a lot of modules. Not all the modules completely will talk when it's in its fail mode, but we do get to talk to a lot of the modules when it's in its failed mode or after it has failed and won't start. So I kind of put that off to the side. Yes, I know there's some communication problems, but I think that's just an effect of what's going on. And so I was beginning to try to develop a plan after just experiencing this over and over and over and trying to derive some sort of path I decided to start by just monitoring all the powers to the cluster, because that's the one thing that I noticed drops out and won't power up once you push the start button. So I wanted to watch the powers of the cluster, and I wanted to watch the body bus, and then the what I'm going to call powertrain bus, the ones that like the engine, transmission, and so on and so forth are on, and see if I get any corruption, any shortness, any shorting of the bus on either of the two buses, and so on and so forth, and monitor all that when we go into our failed mode. So again, as I showed earlier, that is what I have hooked up here. I've got three powers at the cluster. We've got one here, one back probed, and then the third there, and then 4 leads. I've got pins 6 and 14, and then pins 3 and 11. And all of that simultaneous is what I want to watch when we go into our fail mode. And so that's what we have here pulled up on the scope. This is a saved portion of when I was capturing and it dropped out. So just to better explain and show you in detail, this is prior to the failure point. The dead giveaway is going to be this red line, which I'll explain which one that is. And right there we can see a change happen, even in the blue. So if you remember, I was monitoring 3 powers and then 2 buses. So blue, the first 3 channels are going to be our powers. That's blue, red, and green. And we'll just go zoom into this portion. And let's just go here. And as far as where our green is, let's try and find that. Okay, so that was just behind the blue right there. So blue and green, I'll overlay them again just so that we can get a figure on those 2 channels and see where they are at. So right there, blue and green is 2 of our 3 power supplies, and running and idling is right at about 14 volts. And then if we check our red channel, which is our 3rd power supply, obviously somewhere near the same, and obviously with the clear dropout point. Let's see, just to show you, so the yellow and we'll call it purple, that is our powertrain bus, our where the engine computer and all of that are going to be communicating on. So that's going to be pins 6 and 14. And then the teal and gray is going to be our body bus. And these points where we have, let's call them blobs right now because we're so far out in our zoom, especially for bus communication, those are just data packets that are occurring during its operation, which you should have data packets occurring. And so that bus seems to be kind of normal, other than the fact that we're getting a little bit of waviness in our what should be stabilized point, which it almost looks like after the failure point, it almost straightens out right there. I'm wondering if this is like a leading up to type of deal or portion. As far as this other bus, looks like we've lost some of the communication. There's some packets that are occurring there. And just to kind of show you, there we go. So these are packets, and this activity I'm not liking, but we're not fully dropping out. This one looks like we've lost some data in between the packets. So again, not perfect, especially in that, let's call it powertrain bus, but let's take a look. Okay, so if we take a look at our idle point, which is basically our starting point for the bus, which then should go up for can high and down for can low. Our idling points are somewhere in that region. They're in the 2.4, which is close enough for me right now for the starting point. So yeah, all buses, as far as its base point, are somewhere in an okay sort of region. It's just the waviness activity that doesn't look the best. So here is a diagram. This is the instrument cluster, and our power feeds that I am monitoring is this guy here. So it comes in right there. This other one, which comes over here. And our third is this supply here. Now, dependent upon equipment, it's going to be either from the same fuse panel or the IPDM. But I believe this vehicle's is coming from this same fuse panel. But regardless, it's still the same entry point, which is this pin 46 ignition signal. And this is the red wire. And I correlated the red wire with the red trace as far as the channel. So that is the guy that we are losing. The pin 46, it comes from, fuse 11, from that fuse block in the interior left kick panel. And so if we switch over to our power supply, let's see, where am I? So here we go. Fuse 11, red wire, instrument cluster, and other portions, which will get fed from this ignition relay. And then our relay comes this way and is always grounded, which means in order to switch over the relay, we have to supply voltage there on that leg. If we follow that up, it's this ignition relay control from the BCM. So because of seeing that, and based off of some of the trouble codes, and I'll try to list them out as to which ones kind of were leading me to potentially think of either the BCM or the IPDM is at fault, I want to monitor, lastly, before condemning a BCM, because I think everything that's going on is BCM related, is I want to monitor that pin, which looks like a white black wire coming out of BCM, which is going to be right here, this connector, pin 67. I'm going to tap in there, and a gut feeling is I think this guy's going to be bad and faulty. So now when the vehicle acted up, it was around lunchtime for me, because just before we went to lunch, I got it to act up and was filming that everything earlier in the day. So it is, let's see, 10 p.m. So we've got a 10-hour period from when it failed, I shut it off and let it sit, to now I will be keying it up. Everything's still hooked up the same way. I'm going to go ahead and start right here on camera, monitoring all the same channels. And let's see. I'm just going to go ahead, key it up, not necessarily start it yet, before adding the BCM trace. I want to see what the baseline voltage looks like. Well, it's been 10 hours and it's still in its, let's call it lockout mode. Which, I mean, I don't even have to show you guys. Let's look at where the red trace is. It's still down at the bottom. It's been 10 hours. I thought it would have started by now. So let me cycle. So there's off. Pushing the button. And you can hear like the fuel pump kick on. And then you get that, but no powering up of the cluster. And there. Wow, I would have thought 10 hours was enough. Yeah. So now, let's see. Since we're half powered up, let's call it, in order to, because one would say you need to check your powers, grounds, whatnot to the BCM. But if our BCM is talking, if we're able to scan it and talk, then it's going to be like an internal thing of a voltage output issue. I guess I could scan it, but it's going to be no different. I think I'm just going to go ahead, get access to the BCM, which should be in that right kick panel, and possibly tap into that line just so that I'm ready for some testing in the morning. Hopefully 8 to 10 hours from now will be enough of a period, plus the 10 hours already, for this to get out of its funky mode. Alright guys, so I'm still not done, and I'll show you why. I got a little bit curious before ending the night. So, scope is running. I've added my last and final 8th channel, which I'm bringing over there to monitor that voltage output that should be going to the cluster. Exposing and removing the panels. Look what we happen to find. Some aftermarket component that's wired in on this side of the harness. Now, it could be something, maybe not. We don't know if they're tapped into that specific line, so on and so forth. Or it could just be a coincidence that this looks like it's a, let's see, some sort of piggyback for aftermarket performance type of thing that, as far as for me, hopefully is causing the issue. So before I even go ahead and start cutting things out and removing that, I want to tap into that line. It's going to be this connector. It's going to be a red wire. I just got to look, see how many down. I'm going to tap in there and key it up, see if we're getting something coming out. Maybe this is messing it up and not letting it go to the cluster. So let me see, let me get the pin out again, see which red wire is going to be. Okay, so it's going to be our 7th one down on the right on that connector. And that's why I've got the scope running already right now. So, let's see. And actually, it's not a red wire. Forgive me. It is a white and black. Alright, I think I'm in there. Let's go look. So, let's see. So it's going to be my last channel. which I think is this guy here. Alright, so it's somewhere around there. Let's go ahead, key it up. Alright, so let me pause this, see what we find. Okay, so right here. So okay, no output there. So I think I'm still gonna try to eliminate that little module for right now, just to see if it makes any change and kind of go from there. Okay, so maybe I spoke a little soon, but if you notice here, I'm on, let's call it page 7 of 12. This is before I keyed it up. As you can tell, every channel was, let's just say, flatline, no activity. If we go to the next one, we clearly have activity here. We've powered up, woke up the vehicle, so on and so forth. A big thing. So I moved down my last trace channel to be closer down to kind of match the red, which we know is our same circuit, and it's close down to ground. So if we put that there, look what it did do at some point. We're down here at the bottom, and boom, right here, we did get a rise, but look what didn't make it to the cluster. So let's take a look. I found this by just fishing back page by page by page from that last one I was showing you guys, which was clearly the last page where I stopped the capture. So to get a figure, it goes up to about 11.5 volts. Let's see where our blue's at. Yeah, not too far off. So there you go. Our blue is our 11.6, and our I think it's pink or magenta, whatever, is at 11.4. So let's call both 11.5. Which, the more important thing is we had output control from the BCM. Let's continue. So we had it all the way up to this point, which we also lost the blue channel, and we had some activity there on the bus going down. Now, I was pushing the button. I was just trying to get something going on, but look. So it dropped down, went over, came back up after the blue came back up. So let me get rid of, let's make this a little clear. Let's get rid of, what channel is that? This one and this one. I think that'll be good for now. So let's move this bus up. Let's move our blue down. So this section here, our red stayed flatlined down at the bottom. Our blue and purple were up at 11.5 for some point, and I must have keyed off or something, and we dropped out. First our BCM output, then our blue power feed, and through the cycling, and you can tell here the bus woke up, so I must have powered it back up because our blue channel came up, the voltage again are 11.5, and some point afterwards our output from BCM came up. But look at our feed at the cluster never got there, which makes sense as to why our cluster doesn't power up. Because I was almost maybe questioning if my back probe were still inserted, but I would say it is because cluster's not physically powering up, and also we are capturing the same sort of deal right here. Let me show you guys. I wouldn't have this on my red if my back probe wasn't in there matching here. So when it's down close to the ground, it's capturing the same as there, and also the blue. Let me show you the blue. So interesting. Let's see. And then if we continue, then we we lose it. So again, I must have been doing my key thing, because again, if you look at the bus from page to page, we have some sort of activity. Both were up high. Next page right away, no activity, and both drop out and stay dropped out, and that's why I thought we had no output. So that's one push of the button. You can hear the dinging, so maybe it's one of the positions. Let me hit it again. And that's when you can hear like the fuel pump kick on, and that's when our output from the BCM goes up. So there you go. I think I almost was getting close to making a bad call. We can't have a bad BCM if our output is good, but it's not reaching the cluster. And we can't call it cluster because it's never getting the power. So I think I'm going to remove that device and see if something changes. I'm going to power it down. I'm going to hit it once. So once is enough to drop both out. Actually, this might not even be a performance thing. I think this has some glow lights underneath, so I don't know. We'll find out. See what we got. Okay, so for right now, I've unraveled a lot trying to see where it's going or what it is, and I've got no idea. It might be the lighting thing. One thing that's just very confusing is that connector there is part of the aftermarket module and harness, and it seems to be an exact fit and plug for the receiving end, which is in the factory body harness. So I don't understand. It's some sort of aftermarket add-on that has an exact receiving end of a plug for something that's already there. Nonetheless, I have not cut anything, because again, trying to see where it goes, what it's for, not sure yet. So for now, I just unplugged it from the vehicle's main harness. Again, we've got the scope running. I guess we can just try to key it up, see if that makes any difference. And it does not. So all right, makes no difference. We're still not completing our journey from our output from BCM to cluster. All right, guys, so doing some more testing. Clearly, as we saw, we do have output from the BCM, and I was getting a little confused, but still same result. So, but just to clarify, output from BCM was not the same red wire to the cluster, or that ends at the cluster. I was just getting a little mixed up, but it's the output feed for control for the relay, which is present. And once that relay gets power feed and grounded, then we'll have our output from there to the red, which we were not seeing go high on the scope, which is at the cluster. So doing some digging, I've gained access to this fuse panel here on the left kick panel side, and I am tapped in. I've tapped into this point here, and we do have the same voltage present, so that whole line from BCM is good. And I've tapped into this right here, and there's still 0 output there. And just double checking, I checked this white line there, and the same result is there, so no output. Being that we go directly to ground, I did also check this line here, and there is no voltage drop, which I could try to show you, but right now I am currently tapped into that red line there, and I can show you the pink is still down at the bottom near the red, so it almost looks like the relay is not closing the contact. I'm going to remove that pin, so just watch the pink, which is the one up top, and see what it does. So that's removed. See how it drops all the way down. I'll put it back in. And we get that little rise. So I think I'm going to swap relays from the power socket relay that's here on the diagram, which should be this guy here. Okay, I've got the relay removed, and I swapped the accessory socket one in. I'm tapped in. Let's look at the cluster. And no difference. Okay, so some updates. I've done a little bit off camera just because it's getting a little bit frustrating, but there are the 2 relays. So newsflash, it's not a relay problem. So just out of curiosity, I put in my relay tester adapter, that guy there, and I will show you that one that said pin 1 is one of the legs of, let's see, so it's installed this way. It's one of the small legs, so this one right here on the bottom. So not the higher amperage, not the load side or work side, it's the control side, but this bottom one here, if I tap that, and mind you, everything is off right now. See the light flashing? It's like the key is just off. I haven't pushed it to wake up the vehicle. And we're just gonna look at the meter at this point. If we turn that on, and if I tap on that pin on the relay tester, we get anywhere from 7 to 9 volts depending on how long it's been sitting after I key it up. So if I key it up, it goes to like 11, and then key off, it starts to drop down. As you can tell, it's down to 6. But that pin, I'll show you, should have 0 volts when key is off. And the reason why it goes to 12 volts is, so I'll tap in here. That is our black and white. And look, so we've got 9 volts there. Let me try again up top. So we'll take that out. Let's see. And if I go and tap up there. Alright, so we're kind of back up. So that's that same circuit. The wire that I was in, that I'll put it back in there now. That is that white and black. That's the power supply, the control side coming from the BCM. That's key off. I'm pretty sure we shouldn't have anything with the key off. Now, I'm gonna leave it on that wire. Hopefully you can see. And then I'm gonna just start to place that in the relay adapter. And it goes away. Pull it back out. And then go back in. Goes away. And it doesn't click, it just drops out. It's not controlling the work side, the control side, and it shouldn't even be trying to control it with the key off. Again, like I misspoke, saying we were gonna mistakenly condemn the BCM, saying we couldn't because it was supplying voltage, because with the relay installed, it's at 0 volts, and then if we key it up, it does bring, let's see, we'll actually leave it tapped in. And right now with no relay, I'm going to push the key button. So there's that. And then one more for position 2. There's the fuel pump. Ran for a second, and I'm going to insert the relay. And it's actually clicking right now. The voltage doesn't drop. Let me see if I can bring you over here and hear the clicking. Hopefully I'll catch it. I'm putting it in and then out. In, out. So with it clicking the relay, voltage not changing, we get no output, or else we'd be getting the dash kicking on, which let me switch over to the red wire. Which will be this guy here. do the same thing with the relay. So some does come out. So 0.3, then 0 when I pull it out. 0.3. Okay, so we're having, looks like a voltage drop issue, which sort of makes sense. If you remember on the scope, the purple line was a little bit elevated off the ground, which would be that 0.3, 0.4 volts there, and then take it off, back down to 0. So that makes sense. So it is clicking the relay over, but we're having a voltage drop issue. Now you're saying basically what's left would be this feed here, which then if it's clicking, this should then send the power over and out on these pins. I back probed this connector. It's a gray wire. It's you can't miss that wire. I'll get you a shot of it later. It's a big, fat, heavy load wire, and there's I didn't load test it, but there is voltage present there, and with the relay adapter, I am getting that voltage also on the relay pins. So it's coming in, getting to the relay pins through the box, but for some reason when this clicks, because we can hear it click, it's not going through. Alright, so we took the fuse box apart, put up some pictures. Just trying to look see if there's any signs of anything inside of it, and I did not find anything. And this is the next day, and it's still not powering up after putting this back together. I've gone ahead, cleaned up all the mess of spaghetti wiring from the scope leads and everything, kind of just to get a fresh start, kind of clear your head, being that we've gotten as far as we have so far. After putting it back together, this guy here, remember last night I told you the big fat thick gray wire that's the constant feed to the relay had a consistent battery source, I don't know, 11, 12 volts. This today, after putting it back together, it's actually a different story. So if we look there, I'm going to tap into, and it's a hot all the time. I'm going to go in that big thick gray wire, and look at that. So before it was around 6 volts. This is today after putting it all back together and plugging that connector back in. I had about 6 volts. Now we're down to about 4. It's kind of bouncing around. And now I will go on the relay pin, just the tester portion of the constant. Let me see if I can. Okay, so there. At the relay pin, it's down to look like 2 volts. So there is something going on with what I didn't think was going to be a problem, which is that feed to the box for that circuit, which becomes now, let's see, this guy here feeding that relay, and this comes from a fusible link in the engine bay. There we go. We're not getting a constant 12 volts hot. We'll go on the other pin. That's constant 12 volts. We go to the gray one that comes from that fusible link, and we don't get anything. Alright guys, so you just saw me test the voltages, and it wasn't clicking on me until I removed this. You can tell this is regular blade style, and where this should go is like some sort of smaller version of a J case. Basically two males, and they had it just good enough to where they were making contact, which makes sense now. That cannot carry the load over to the for the ignition switch relay. Which makes sense as to why it'll show voltage down there. Today for some reason it was showing less, but yeah, it'll show it, but it's not the load carrying voltage. And this right here has been causing all of this problems. That is crazy. The things people will do. And so just for video purposing, to show you, which I probably don't even really need to, I've got that jumper installed, which should be able to carry the load. And we'll go ahead and crank it. Let's see, so let's see, step on brake, and go. So up running, I'll be able to clear all the codes and get the right fuse.